Marijuana Nation, just a couple of quick announcements before we launch into today's news. First off, this is the 1000th episode of this show, which I started up about 4.5 years ago. That means I've now reported on 10,000 legal marijuana industry news stories, which is a lot of updates when you think about them all at once. I could not have done any of this without the help of a lot of people, and I'm going to be spending some time over the Thanksgiving holiday making a special episode thanking everyone. So after today's episode, we'll be back next with news on Tuesday, December 1st, with that special Thanksgiving episode to run sometime later this week. I hope everyone has an enjoyable, sedentary holiday at home with the people you've been bubbled up with an eye on celebrating properly next year after we've calmed things down with the coronavirus. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, November 24th, 2020, and you're tuned in to episode 1000 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We lead off the day's news up in Canada, where New Cannabis Ventures has sales numbers for that nation's legal cannabis industry for September, where shoppers spent 108% more for the month than the previous month, dropping $256 million Canadian, or around $196 million US. Legal marijuana sales in Canada have been on a healthy growth line since starting up back in October of 2018, and Alan Brockstein in New Cannabis Ventures nicely lays out in his piece the province-by-province breakdown for the last 5 months, as well as some data on marijuana product verticals. This is particularly interesting given Canada's shift to the so-called Cannabis 2.0 product set, which now includes modalities like edibles and drinks. It's a great idea professionally to have a solid handle on the developments of the Canadian cannabis market, so I'd think about poking around this one in full. As we always do, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. On Friday, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam was interviewed by a local Virginia radio station and pledged that his state would be a leader in the South when it comes to legalizing adult use marijuana. Last week, Governor Northam called on Virginia lawmakers to pass adult use in the next legislative session, and on Friday pressed for the need to include social equity provisions and programs. With budget shortfalls being what they are across the nation, this seems like it might be the right time for big progressive reforms in Virginia. Another storyline to keep a close eye on for sure. Our final top story in the day brings us to the world of sport, where boxing legend and cannabis entrepreneur Mike Tyson is soon set to fight again, slated to battle against fellow older boxer Roy Jones Jr. The exhibition match between the 54-year-old Tyson and the 51-year-old Jones Jr. will have each of the fighters drug tested under the protocols of the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association, but marijuana will not be one of the substances screened for. Given Tyson's well-publicized love of consuming cannabis, that's kind of a no-brainer for this one, but it's still fun to read about. We actually had a chance to interview Mike on the Green Rush podcast, which you can find over at greenrushpodcast.net. Just do a search for Mike Tyson Green Rush to find that particular episode. Those are the top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, MJ Today Media, publishers of this podcast, our flagship show, Marijuana Today, as well as the Weed Wonks and Green Rush podcasts, which can be found over at weedwonks.com and greenrushpodcast.net. If you have a legal marijuana business, product, brand, or service that you need to market to the smartest audience in legal cannabis, then look no further than MJ Today Media. We can work with budgets of all sizes and will help drive both direct action as well as overall brand awareness for whatever you are working on. To get on our advertising calendar or to just learn more about the benefits of becoming a sponsor, email our business developer Michael over at michael@mjtodaymedia.com. That's michael@mjtodaymedia.com. All right, time for the Blitz. Kyle Yeager picked up on news out of the banking sector as the number of banks and financial institutions working with legal marijuana businesses has dropped for the third fiscal quarter in a row, shown in a new report by the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN. As of the latest quarter, just 677 depository institutions were actively engaged with legal cannabis business customers, down from 690 last quarter and at around the same level as back in April of 2019. This is a pretty complex issue, so the drop in numbers has a lot of background context and detail associated with it, so I'd suggest opening up Kyle's story for the full read if this one catches your attention. Marijuana multi-state operator Jushi Holdings just announced plans to invest $50 million into the Pennsylvania medical marijuana market, growing its cultivation facilities in Scranton from 90,000 square feet to more than 160,000, with a goal of reaching an eventual canopy size of 98,000 square feet. Jushi has a total of 8 dispensaries in Pennsylvania right now after buying up shops from Vireo Health earlier this year. A lawsuit was filed last week in South Dakota seeking to have the recent ballot measure legalizing adult use marijuana tossed out for technical reasons. The lawsuit was filed by 2 law enforcement officials who are claiming that the ballot measure runs counter to state law over how initiatives interact with constitutional changes. Another good one to read in full if you're watching South Dakota. Longtime California regulator Lori Ajax has announced that she will be stepping down from her position leading up the California Bureau of Cannabis Control as of December 1st. Ms. Ajax was first appointed to the position back in 2017 by then Governor Jerry Brown. No word has been given as of yet as to her replacement. Jumping back up to Canada, we have a good story about a citizen's petition asking the federal government to decriminalize psychedelics like mushrooms. If a citizen's petition hits 15,000 signatures of support in Canada, the federal government is compelled to answer, and in this case, officials said they are just not ready yet to make psychedelics legal, pointing out that people do currently have an avenue for getting official exemptions to use psychedelics for therapeutic reasons. That's not likely to make any activists go home, though, so expect to see more pressure of this kind everywhere. We end the day's news up north as Marijuana Business Daily laid out the amount of money that various legal marijuana companies based in Canada received from their federal government in the form of pandemic-related subsidies. That's a stark contrast to how things have rolled out in the United States, where marijuana firms were officially blocked from getting any kind of relief, the little bit that did manage to squeak out of the Republican-controlled Congress. Marijuana firm Zenabis stands on top of this chart with more than $6 million in aid received. In all, 18 companies are listed as having benefited from the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again next week on Tuesday, December 1st, with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, MJ Today Media, and to our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.